I mean, who elected Soros to dictate public policy and laws?
Ladies and gentlemen, Bukele is calling out George Soros.
It is truly an honor to be here just a few days after our presidential and legislative elections, which, by the way, they pulverized the opposition. They say globalism comes to die at CPAC. I'm here to tell you that in El Salvador, it's already dead.
And I can tell you that is a fact, because I live surrounded by Salvadorian people. I've never seen them so happy to go back and visit their own people for a vacation.
But if you want globalism to die here too, you must be willing to unapologetically fight against everything and everyone that stands for it. Fight for your freedoms. Fight for your rights. The next president of the United States must not only win an election, he must have the vision, the will, and the courage to do whatever it takes. And above all, he must be able to identify the underlying forces that will conspire against him. These dark forces are already taking over your country. You may not see it yet, but it's already happening. You don't see it as clearly because people are designed to see linear changes. We don't always recognize how fast a problem can multiply and spiral out of control.
That's what I've been telling people. It's not as simple as you think. You need to see the broader picture.
The problem is much like the metaphor of the boiling frog. Once the water boils, it's already too late. People fail to see these things. It's our nature. Just like the frog, people become complacent and they don't realize how bad things are getting until it's too late. Well, I know, of course, El Salvador is a lot smaller country. Setting aside the differences, there's a similarity with what is happening here in the United States. We also had many apparently isolated problems in the 60s and the 70s, and we failed to realize as a country the severity of them until it became a civil war. By the time we reacted, it was already too late. We were already boiled like the frog. And it took us 50 years, 2 wars, 250,000 lives, and a third of our population displaced, and a near miracle to get our country back. As your friend, I want to issue this warning so you don't make the same mistakes we did in the 60s and the 70s. It is not easy to pull yourself back once you're in boiling water. In fact, all the experts said it was impossible. And besides, you don't want to wait 50 years and maybe hope for a miracle to get out of hell.
Because most of the experts believe that the solution is not humane. But then at the same time, I'm like, not doing something about it and seeing how many people die, that the country almost lost 1/3 of their own population by handling the way America wanted it, that's also humane?
You can still jump before the water boils. Some might say I'm exaggerating, but we can clearly see the signs of a declining society because our own hit rock bottom decades ago. It's like when we see someone getting sick. First, it's maybe just stomachache or a headache or a small fever. But if you don't deal with the disease, it will only get worse. And then it may be too late. Even after our first war in El Salvador, we failed again to look into the signs of the second civil war that was coming, the gang war. After 1 million people fled the first war, a lot of them came to live in ghettos here in the United States, where the gangs were formed. When former President Clinton deported a lot of those gang members without telling us they were gang members, they were criminals. They roamed free and recruited young people, thousands of young Salvadorans to join the gangs.
I can confirm, my Salvadorian friends and church leader and a bunch of others that I meet say the same thing. America ruined our country because they deported our own people back? No, they deported the worst. And it destroyed the country for many years, that it even created a gang that became part of the culture for decades. And now, they solved it.
At first, they seemed like petty criminals, but they began to change and transform until they became the unscrupulous terrorists that we know today. Most of them even perform satanic rituals, and this has been well documented. The government back then didn't deal with the disease, nor did the next administration, nor did the ones after that. The disease that had begun with mild symptoms got worse and worse. It became a cancer that seemed incurable. We are already seeing these symptoms in the United States. Big cities in decline like Baltimore, Portland, New York, just to name a few. Places where crime and drugs have become the daily norm and even accepted and promoted by the government. How many young people have you lost to the streets of Philadelphia or San Francisco, to fentanyl? Did we see these apocalyptic sights 15, 10, 5 years ago? Can you imagine how it will be in the next 5, 10, or 15 years? The same thing was happening in El Salvador. In the span of less than a decade, gangs took control of all the country and our society. They evolved into a parallel government, controlling elections and even political parties. Every aspect of the daily life of most people was controlled by the gangs. Murder capital of the world is a tragic title to hold. Getting rid of that was the bare minimum we had to achieve in order to even start thinking about rebuilding our country. But jumping out of the water when it's already boiling is an almost impossible feat. You are not there yet, and believe me, you don't want to be. We did the unthinkable to cleanse our society. We arrested the terrorists, but we have to remove corrupt judges and corrupt attorneys and prosecutors.
I'm like, how far does your humanity go for certain people and not for certain people? They're just too soft on crime, and it feels like an incentive sometimes.
Thank you. These corrupt judges and prosecutors were setting the gang members free.
And Nancy Pelosi.
Well, officially, yeah. She did do insider trading, right? Becoming super rich.
And it wasn't just the gangs. The corrupt system worked in tandem with the so-called international community, the NGOs, and of course the fake news, just like it happens here in the United States. Unelected bureaucrats are trying to instate public policy. Who elected them? They don't have a democratic mandate. If they want a seat in the table, they should run for office. Let the people vote. It will not be a pretty sight for them if the elections are free and fair. I mean, who elected Soros to dictate public policy and laws? Why does he feel entitled to impose his agenda?
He likes the feeling that he feels like a god.
I cannot and do not look at the social consequences of what I do. Well, actually, funny way, it's just like in markets, that if I weren't there, of course I wasn't doing it, but somebody else would be taking it away anyhow. In other words, whether I was there or not, I was only a spectator, the property was being taken away. So I had no role in taking away that property. So I had no sense of guilt.
Let me tell you something. Soros and his cronies hit a brick wall in El Salvador. Thank God, another glory be to him, Salvadorans are now immune to his influence. No one believes his lies anymore over there. We just had free and fair elections, and we won in a landslide with more than 84% of the vote. Let that sink in. More than 84% of the people voted to continue our policies. Our victory is unprecedented in the history and modern democracies in the world. They also gave us a supermajority in Congress, more than that. 54 seats out of 60. 57 if we count our allies. That's 95% of Congress. Let that also sink in. The people of El Salvador have woken up, and so can you. The global elites, they hate our success, and they fear yours. The people's free will to choose their leaders is something they despise.
They don't let people vote by seeing the evidence. They want the evidence to be filtered in a specific way, and only then can it be judged.
They cannot control that. You have experienced this firsthand here in the United States. The global elites control the mainstream media. They finance campaigns, district attorneys, to mention a few. They abuse their powers. They persecute political opponents. In El Salvador, we don't weaponize our judicial system to persecute our political opponents. A practice that may sound familiar to you, but we don't do that there. And who's the dictator?
I believe the current Democrat in USA.
The global elites in the media, they work in conjunction, they run some stories and publish them, same pictures to reinforce their agendas. You're no strangers to that. Here in the United States, we deal with that in El Salvador too. That is the free press that they talk about? Please. I always criticize the defenders of institutionalism, not because I don't think strong institutions are paramount and necessary for a democracy, but because I find them very hypocritical. They don't seem to have the same standards for themselves as they are trying to impose on others.
Part of the reason he is so rich is that the Soros hedge funds operate offshore in the Netherlands Antilles to avoid scrutiny by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So even while Soros tells Congress and the Treasury that hedge funds must be regulated to stop the global crisis, he's avoiding the rules.
So in some ways it's to escape regulation.
Yeah, that's right.
But you've been sitting here talking about the need for regulation.
Yes, and whatever regulations are imposed, we will obey. We already conform to everything.
But there's yet another component that is more dangerous than a simple double standard. Institutions were created to serve the people, and not the other way around. Somewhere along the way, those people forgot their fundamental purpose, which is more important than the institution itself. When the judicial system was created, it was created out of the necessity to bring justice. But now, it seems like survival and control of the judges, of the AGs, among others, are paramount. And the need to bring justice is merely a little more than an afterthought. Another example, the police was created to bring law and order. Let them seek law and order then. But now some of them are even afraid to do their job because they fear the consequences for doing it.
We took the recipes from the European Union, we took the recipes from the United States. None of the recipes worked. More bloodshed, more people were dying. So what do? Okay, we do something and we save people. And now we're the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. But suddenly something's bad. Oh, but you shouldn't do that. You should do what I think you should do. Why? Not only we have the right to do what we think is right and what the Salvadoran people are going to decide whether or not they want this day in free elections, but also we've proven it works. And you haven't proven that your system works in our country. Might work in yours, I don't know. But it doesn't work in ours. You have your own system. We don't tell you that you shouldn't have a monarchy. I mean, we're fine with your monarchy. We love your monarchy, it's fine. But we don't say, oh, you shouldn't have a monarchy and you shouldn't have hereditary titles. Why? Because it's your country. You can do whatever you want with it. But suddenly, we have to do what you want to do with our country. So, what I'm gonna finish the question is that this has been proven by all of you and by all independent sources. El Salvador was turned from the most dangerous place in the world to the safest in the Western Hemisphere. That's not a small feat. And that's not done easily. And nobody in the world has ever done it before, so fast and so clean like we have done it here, with no civilian casualties.
It's like the Bible said, evil will be good and good will be evil. But I just wanted to let you know that people are waking up. And how Salvadorian people were telling me they were living in their own country, it sounded like hell. It made sense that all of them were coming over to Barcelona because it was a very scary place. So I'm happy it's the safest country, when previously it was one of the most unsafe country, and they changed it very clear. How? Arresting anyone that is part of the MS-13 gang and they are doing gangster stuff. And surprisingly, everybody hates Salvadorian president, but so for odd reason I'm like, do you want more Salvadorian people to die? Do you know how many Salvadorian people I knew have that member as if it's part of the culture? It makes no sense. But anyway, I'll keep it here. Didn't want to make it too long. Love you guys. Sunday chill. Praise the Jesus that you want to praise. But other than that, like the video, share the usual, and see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Don't get me wrong, ma cosa kita bong. Buta fire na mi blonde kush hash purple skunk criollo colombici jam jam tur loqueta verdeta welcome.